Hello and welcome to the Raptors Show, powered by DoorDash on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. I'm your host, Win Lu. Alex is not here because it's Wednesday. A reminder that we are back in the studio and streaming live once again on Sportsnet's YouTube channel, Monday to Friday between 2 and 3 p.m. Hello, people watching online. Maybe Alex is in the chat. You might be able to find him there. And for the first segment, we switched up a little bit. We usually say Big V for the second segment, and then we run out of time to talk all things soccer. But we got to bring Big V up top. So, Vivek, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm loving this opening segment bit, so let's get to it.
I know. But look, we have to save more time because I think there was not enough coverage on this Raptors program about Canada's 2 wins over the weekend. One.
No.
I mean,
not enough.
Yeah, so we'll save 5 minutes at the end of the segment for that. But let's first talk about the Raptors Heat. Raptors defeating the Heat for the second time in 4 days. I'm watching the highlights now. Obviously, the empty arena, I think definitely, I think it just cuts short the atmosphere. Like, I really enjoyed the intensity of the game when it was played down in Miami, even though we weren't there. We were watching on TV, but you could just feel how much that building was sort of adding to the pressure and the stakes of the game. It didn't feel quite the same yesterday, but there were some fans, including I would say yourself in there too. So let me just ask you up top, how was your experience returning to the arena?
Well, sitting next to Alex is always a special experience. And the first half
you got to clarify.
The first half we were trying to watch, and then he hits me with, would you rather see, 100 fans screaming like Will Lou or one giant Will Lou screaming like 100 regular fans? And there went my analysis of the first half. I was just trying to break that down for pretty much the rest of the game. And then
my question to that would be, actually, just to interrupt you, like my question to that, aren't I always a giant Will Lou screaming like 100 fans? Like, I feel like that's not even like a proposition. Like, that's just what I do normally. So
I guess I was just picturing like a giant William Lou that like takes up the space of 100 fans, and therefore your head is like almost, into like the gondola.
The inflatable raptor?
And yeah, pretty much. That size of you just walking across the court would be hilarious. So that's what I was trying to process. And then as I was trying to process all of that, he hits me with, did you realize the Raptors are not only ending a stretch of 3 games in 4 nights, but beginning a stretch of 3 games in 4 nights? And then I had to process that. So, but what I do find interesting about like when you're in the arena with such few fans, you kind of pay attention to everything that's abnormal about that situation, right? Like usually you're so caught up on what's happening in the game, and now it's like you're looking all over the arena. You're noticing Drake pulling out his laptop next to Masai.
Wait, what?
Trying to
hold on.
To break down.
Why did Drake come with a laptop?
I don't know, but I mean, maybe Blake Murphy sent him the spreadsheets, and he was like, "Hey, there's some good stuff to work with here."
Wow.
But okay. You're noticing that kind of stuff, and you're looking over to the other corner, and there's Bobby Webster. You're wondering, hey, is he going to pull out his phone? Then you're trying to see what the fans are doing in their section. You're noticing how active Nick Nurse is constantly.
Yeah.
Whether it's defensively, offensively, directing traffic. And so you really pay attention to a lot of things that aren't actually happening within the court.
Yeah, and there's so much happening. And for me, like, especially when I go to the games too, and I wasn't able to go yesterday, but I will be there Thursday. It's just like everything is just laid out. And, like everybody in the building is someone to pay attention to. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you could see Masai, and I always find myself like watching what he's doing and sort of seeing how he's moving. Same with Bobby, same with the rest of the front office who are all kind of scattered around the arena. Drake was there yesterday, which was cool, as you mentioned, with his laptop. That is still really funny. I definitely would love to ask Drake one day about why he brought a laptop to the game. Like he's a member of the media. But in any case, it was honestly like even just having a few fans there. Was there at least a little bit of atmosphere? Because it felt like there was like maybe 200 people there, right? Which is a big change from before because they weren't bringing any fans in there before. But it felt like there was, family and friends in attendance. We saw on the television broadcast. on Sportsnet that, Gary Trent Sr. was there, who was like
Mm-hmm.
eating peanuts and had like 5 drinks, and he's just made like a whole mess by himself. Like, in any case, though, yeah, like, did that add to the atmosphere in any way, or was it still kind of weirdly haunting that like the place is so empty?
It was definitely still weirdly haunting, but you could appreciate the fans like trying to do the best they could. I think the one thing that did take away from what they were trying to bring to the table is that they still had, the fake fan noise dropping in, which was drowning out the actual fans because there's only so much noise that they can make.
Right.
And so I think that part of it was a bit weird. But then I don't know, maybe it would be weirder to just actually only hear like 100 fans.
Yeah, fair enough. They should just mic up the 100 fans. Forget the fake crowd noise. Just mic up the 100 fans, myself included. Also, the other part is I noticed Alex tweeted out on Twitter that so they gave away T-shirts. what?
They did.
Yeah, that's interesting. So did they just have like everybody got 5 T-shirts or something? Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, it was pretty much the opposite. Getting a shirt was as good as you're going to get, and so good for the fans. At least they got that out of it, plus the win. And even when the fans haven't been there, the game ops has been treating it like they are, telling people to vote for All-Star and telling people to cheer for the Raptors and this and that. And so they've been keeping it consistent, and so I'm not surprised that they went ahead and did this as well. So who knows? Maybe we'll get the tribute videos going soon enough too.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of the weirdest empty arena experiences was when the Raptors were playing the Suns, and I literally counted there was like about 100 people in the building, right, including the players and the teammates and stuff like that. And like right before they were like, vote for Fred for All-Star, and I was like, who did you want to do that? Did you want like Devin Booker to like pull out his phone and like tweet it real quick right before like 2 minutes before tip off? Like, who was that for? Anyway. The Raptors are doing their best, clearly. And, the situation is getting better eventually. So I think more and more people are going to get back in there.
They
do
need to get Devin Booker voting for the Raptor to get to the Mascot Hall of Fame.
Yes, I agree. It's the least he could do, really. Like, if he can throw off a star player like that, you should be in the Hall of Fame. Like, that should be, like...
That's elite.
He should give the speech, too, Like, how someone has to, like, introduce you to the Hall of Fame? Like, that should be Devin being like... Yeah, every night I go to sleep, but, it takes me an extra hour because I'm always picturing the Raptor. I don't even know what the Raptors did. He jumped? He did like a jumping jack? Anyway.
It was something like that. But, I mean, hey, the way the minutes are going for the bench, the Raptor could literally sit on the bench and, he might get some minutes too.
Yeah, I was going to say, who's more active, the Raptor or Nick Nurse on the sidelines?
You know what? It might be Nick still, because that man just does not stop.
Yeah, he really doesn't. And good for him, honestly. Because, look, all they've been talking about is we got to get some energy into the games. We got to get some energy. And what did the Raptors do yesterday? They got off to a slow start. They were down right away 7-0 to the Heat. The Heat were knocking down some threes. They were getting to the rim. They were getting offensive rebounds. And it was just like a sluggish performance from the team in the first half, which is like almost exactly what happened against Atlanta, right? The day before this. They were in Atlanta, but it was different. But still, like, same deal. They're down at halftime. This time they're down more. They were down, I think, 9 against the Hawks, and this time they were down 12 against the Heat at half. But then the third quarter comes around, and all of a sudden it's like a different team shows up. And, I mean, I guess I would just want to ask you, like, why? Like, why are the Raptors, like, why do they open so sort of, like, lackadaisical? And then why are they just so damn good in the third quarter?
To be honest, it's hard to find an explanation for the lackadaisical starts, because the one thing you do praise about this team is their effort level, right? Yeah. The way that they can sort of put on a show with how hard they go in the second half. It's hard to explain why that can't happen in the first. The good thing is that you do see it in the second half, and then when you're watching that second half, you think about what the Miami Heat are all about. It's about their work rate and their intensity and how physical they play. And, there's probably, less than a handful of teams that you would say that can actually handle that and give back as good as they get. And you would put the Raptors in that list. They've proven it, especially these last 2 games, the one that went to triple overtime and the victory last night. That in terms of the physicality, in terms of, the compete level, the Raptors can outcompete the Heat, which says a lot about a team that obviously doesn't have Kyle Lowry right now, but still has Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo.
Yeah. By the way, the way you're describing the Heat, I thought you were talking about Burnley. You're, you're talking about work rate and physicality, and they're trying to score off corners and stuff. Yeah, you know what? That definitely felt like what Miami's offense looked like yesterday was Burnley-esque. Eric Spoelstra pulling a Sean Dyche on the sideline. Okay, so yeah, the third quarter. Do you think there's something to the idea that like the Raptors? I mean, obviously they can get to this sort of all-out level, but maybe they can't do it for the whole game, and so they almost like purposely conserve themselves, or they basically know like sort of, okay, we can kind of go like rope-a-dope a little bit first half. Yeah, we might take a little bit of a loss here, but we're going to stick in the game. We're not going to be out of the game altogether. And then the third quarter, you make some key halftime adjustments. Maybe that's just good coaching by Nick Nurse, who's able to make some of these changes on the fly. And then, you have your leaders who have to step up, because it felt like at the third quarter, and usually what happens when the Raptors struggle is in the first half is Fred says enough is enough, and then he single-handedly like pulls the team together. And what he did in the third quarter in yesterday's win was that he scored 14 points in the third quarter alone. This is after he only took 2 field goal attempts in the first half. So it felt like he was like, look, we're not going to lose this game. We know how to beat the Heat. We know how to play this team. We know we can beat them. We know we're better than them right now. And right now the Raptors are playing that well that they can feel confident that they're at least on the level or even better than the Miami Heat at this specific juncture. So, it felt like Fred specifically kind of took over, and then the rest of the team kind of just followed in his path.
Yeah, I definitely share that. I also lean towards something that you mentioned before, where the first half they do kind of have that vibe there where they're just trying to see who has it on the night. And it's like, does Fred have it going? Does Pascal have it going? Does OG? Does Gary? Gary's obviously just got it going.
Yeah, every quarter Gary's got it going.
Now. But I think there is a bit of that feeling out process in the first half, and it's kind of understandable because in terms of Scotty Barnes, he's a guy that has had his ups and downs in terms of consistency, and so when he's not got it going, then you sort of filter towards the other guys. OG Anunoby has been a bit up and down, and so then you funnel the offense a certain way as well. And then when they get to halftime, it's like, okay, this is what we got going, this is what we don't. And then I think that sort of sets up the hierarchy for the next 24 minutes where they obviously seem to be a much better team. Yeah,
I agree. And it's good that they turn it around. I think it's really impressive that they have this next gear to kick into, right? Because I think one of the assumptions, and I remember Blake asked me this, was like, do you worry a little bit about the fact that the Raptors are cutting the rotation down so low? The guys are playing at generally very high intensity all the time, that come time for the playoffs, there won't be this extra gear for the Raptors to kick into when other teams are able to have the luxury of shortening the rotation, cutting out guys who are unproductive, and only going with guys that they know can really play, and then playing on a higher intensity overall just because it's the playoffs. Do you worry that the Raptors won't have that gear? But then I'm watching games like this, and I'm like, I see this gear like every game now, right? Like, this is not like Washington. They did this. Milwaukee, when they gave up 77 points at halftime. DeMarcus Cousins was looking like prime DeMarcus Cousins right before he got cut by the team. Utah, they did this. Remember, Utah came here with 8 guys and then like 2 players who people actually have seen in the NBA before. And then they flipped it around in the third quarter. Like, it just keeps happening over and over again. Atlanta just now as well, Washington. So this is just kind of the identity of the team. And I think, Fred, was able to pick it up. I thought Pascal, obviously, part of it is just sometimes he gets into early foul trouble too, right? So I thought in the game yesterday, he picked up 3 early fouls. Some of them were dubious, whatever. The Heat were pretty good at taking charges, and especially PJ Tucker, who definitely tried to take a charge on Gary Trent Jr. In the fourth quarter, and it did not work. But if obviously when Pascal is able to contribute and play freely and sort of play within the flow, it changes so much for the game. And then we got to talk about Gary. I mean, what do you make of this? Because I was looking back on the film yesterday just about Gary's 11 makes from the field where he scored 33 points off of them. There's certain games for me where Gary is catching and shooting for 3 because other guys are drawing that much attention, and he's a very effective catch and shoot player, so he's going to be able to get these opportunities and score with them. Yesterday, it felt like Gary was just given the ball and asked to create like 8 or 9 times, and he succeeded almost every single time. And the degree of difficulty in some of his makes was through the roof, and yet he still had another efficient 30-point outing. What did you make of Gary's outing yesterday?
I mean, I think he's just in a zone right now. Like you mentioned, PJ Tucker. Every time he was matched up against PJ Tucker, it was like he was looking at barbecue chicken. It was like, I'm going to get my shot off. I'm going to make it. It doesn't matter the degree of difficulty. And, I mean, he was getting separation pretty much every time. And so I think he's just really comfortable with his offensive game right now. He knows how to get to his spots, and he feels like he can make anything. So I think you got to keep writing that. And so I do like the fact that, Fred VanVleet said that, Gary's, he is the flow, and he kind of has his own flow. It's not within the flow of the offense kind of thing. But I still do feel to an extent that Gary understands when to pick his spots. He understands when it's like a catch and shoot moment for him, and he understands when the team sort of needs him to take advantage of a one-on-one opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I think he's mixed that up really well this season. And, it's interesting in terms of the long-term conversation. Coming into this season, you probably looked at Gary as a guy that, hey, can he just get to a level where maybe he's a trade chip? And now you're looking at him and saying this is a part of the core. And he could certainly elevate you with this type of scoring because it's so needed on this team. You think about the limited three-point shooting options. You think about the limited one-on-one shot creation on the team. I think he is huge for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, first off, the larger conversation about Gary, if we're just going to take it back to, like, when he re-signed or even when he was acquired at the trade deadline, it wasn't like it was, like, universally hailed as a success. Right? At those two junctures, at the trade deadline last year, it was like, maybe we get a pick for Norm. And they didn't get a pick for Norm. They got Gary, who was an impending free agent. Then they were like, well, maybe we use the low cap hold by Gary, and then we do some things in free agency. The Raptors didn't do anything in free agency. And they signed him to a deal that a lot of people are like, why is it only 2 years plus a player option? Why do you give him a player option? Well, first off, you got to be just uninformed with the way the Raptors operate. They give every single person a player option. Svi Mihalik has a player option for next year, okay? OG has a player option. Pascal has a player option. Fred has a player option. Kyle had a player option. Like, this is just normal standard practice for what the Raptors do with their players. The other part is just, like, people were talking about, well, maybe we bring him off the bench. Like, not to flame friends of the show, but I like them enough to be able to bring these things up. But, I was talking to Joe Wolfon before the season. I was like, Joe, what do you think of the starting five will be? I think Gary should start. He's like, well, maybe we get Goran in there. We keep the 2-point guard lineup going. You get the downhill action that Goran does. You get the playmaking. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good, man. I want Gary. And then, a month or two into the season, Gary was doing really well at the start of the year. I was asking Blake, I was like, hey, these Miles Turner trade rumors are coming up. Would you do Gary in a first for Miles Turner? He's like, yeah, I'd do that. And I'm like, no, I think I'm going to reinvest. I'm not trying to say, like, I'm like a Gary Trent Jr. stan. I'm just trying to say, like, Gary himself has redefined so many expectations for what he can do, right? And now, like, when you look at him, you have to wonder, like, okay, if you're thinking about who's the third option for the Raptors, like, it depends on how the defense plays it always, right? If the defense really keys in on Gary, I don't need him to force the shots specifically. But at the same time, like, who the first and second options are. It's going to be Pascal and Fred. But then the third options basically have to come down between Gary and OG. And right now, Gary has shown you, what kind of third option can give you 5 straight 30-point games? Like, that's an incredible luxury. A lot of first options can't do that,
No, not at all. The funny thing is, if you had to watch OG Anunoby when he plays like the third guy, it's almost like he's asking himself, am I the third guy? When you watch Gary, it's very much, why am I not the first guy? That's the way he plays. And you need that confidence. You need that swagger that he brings to the table. And again, he is redefining his ceiling, right? I think a big part of when you mention, would you do, Gary Trent and a first-round pick for Miles Turner, the reason you have that conversation is because you think about what Gary Trent could be. And it's like, okay, is this as good as he could be? But now when he's playing like this, when he's giving you the defense that he's giving you as well, it makes you think, hey, at 23 years old, there's probably another level that he's at by the time he's, 25, 26. And then you can look at some of the deals that they've made, right? Yeah. Terrence Ross, you probably traded him at his ceiling, and you got back a Serge Ibaka. DeMar DeRozan, you re-signed him you traded him for someone like Kawhi Leonard, right? And so the Raptors have shown a history of trading quality players at their absolute peak. And so as opposed to before saying, hey, maybe this is the best we can get out of Gary, you're probably looking at the situation and now saying there's several good years to come, and there's several good years of improvement to come from Gary.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the wildest part about Gary, so he was born in 1999. He is younger than Malachi Flynn. He's in the same birth year as Precious Achiuwa and Delano Banton. Like that, and when you compare how polished he is at his age compared to some of the other guys who are born the same year, I understand some of these other guys started playing basketball late. Like Precious clearly started playing basketball late, you know. But
yeah,
like wow, it's just really impressive, and you really got to take your cap off to Gary Trent Sr. for the way he's trained his son specifically, and obviously that you're off to a great start if you can have an NBA father, and obviously you're mostly set for life and things like this. But the work ethic, the way he's really humble, it really comes across in these interviews. I've really enjoyed what Gary's done, and yeah, honestly,
one last thing I want to add to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is just like he has this rock star personality, but he is incredibly humble and willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
Right. Like I remember when he re-signed, he spoke about conversations he had with his dad about, hey, what defines people at this NBA level is being able to get that second contract. Like a lot of people come into the league, but then they can be out by the time that first contract is done.
Yeah.
So the fact that he had this attitude that like, hey, I've got to earn that second contract, I bet you now that he's got this, he's also saying, hey, how do I get to that third contract and that fourth contract?
Yep.
And that's what gives you the belief that he can take his game where it is now and get to an even better level.
Yeah, for sure. And I honestly, I would love to get Gary Trent Sr. on the program. This is a note to producer Alex, who I know is diligently listening in the background. But I do want to think about sort of like how sort of the development happened as he was raised, but also like how like certain things when you have setbacks in your career, how that affects you. Because Gary, people forget Gary was a second-round pick. Now he was highly recruited going into Duke. But he came out as a second-round pick. He came out of the draft a little early, whatever. Which obviously, in retrospect, that turned out to be a great decision because he's been able to get to that second contract really young, right? Like for example, right now he's already making $17 million, while a guy like Delano's just coming into the league as a rookie, right? So there's clearly like you're already ahead of the curve financially. But also it's just like, how did that kind of setback affect him, right? And for a lot of players, being a second-round pick is not a setback, but for him, he probably thought he was going to be a first-round pick. And the way he's playing right now, clearly he's a guy who should have been a first-round pick. Thinking back on it, but
yeah.
Gary has been such a pleasant surprise this season. This whole Raptors team has been pleasant surprises, just like Canada soccer altogether this year. First off, salute to the women winning in Tokyo last year. Just an incredible run. I loved covering it. It was so much fun to watch. That team, they were so gritty. And one thing that the women did was beat the U.S., which is something the men did this past weekend. So we have now transitioned to the soccer portion of the program. Alex, you can stop listening. Yeah, bro, what is going on? So Canada is just suddenly like maybe the best team in North America? Is that even a maybe now?
I don't think it's a maybe. I think they are the best team. And when you look at the way they play, like the confidence, the belief that they play with, you talk about not having Alphonso Davies in the mix, not having Steven Eustachiou, not having Atiba Hutchinson. And they're like, no problem. We believe we can get the job done. We believe that, Jonathan David and Kyle Laren will put in a shift and help us out defensively. Mm-hmm. And then, when the time comes, they'll pull out, a trick out of the hat and find a way to get a goal too. So, I think the belief level is there. Like, I don't think the rest of the campaign, I don't even think it's about necessarily just clinching qualification. I think they absolutely want to finish this campaign in first to send that message. And then I think they also want to finish undefeated, which is something they still have going for them.
Yeah, I mean, first off, just the goals over the weekend were just unbelievable. The second goal in the Honduras game by Jonathan David, the ball over the top was already incredible, right? Just pinged the ball. But then the three touches he took, one off the head, one off the shoulder to sort of like, get himself to turn while also guiding the ball in the direction he's going, the head right down to the feet, which is more of a standard touch, but still really, really well done. And then the chip with his, I think, left foot over the keeper rushing out was just an unbelievable goal. Like that's a golazo in any circumstance. And then even over the weekend,
That
I mean, I mean, the quick goal, the quick 1-2 between David and Laren at the start to just get kind of off on the right step at home in Hamilton with all those fans in attendance. Like what was that goal? Like the 7th minute? Like that was just a perfect way
yeah.
to start it. 6th minute. My producer is saying,
But no, just to go back to that Jonathan David goal, I mean, that combination of touch, the speed to
yeah,
go through, and then, the calmness to get it over the keeper and into the net. Like, if Zlatan does that, we're talking about that as like a top 5, worst case, top 10 goal of the season, right? And I think to see a Canadian do that, like he's going to get a lot of attention. I mean, he's been associated with Arsenal a lot in this January window.
Mm-hmm.
There's some speculation that Chelsea and Real Madrid might get involved.
Sure.
We'll see how that goes in the summer. But he's a big-time player. And that's the thing. When you look across the field now, when this team is at full strength, there's multiple players playing for big clubs in Europe, which tells you everything you need to know about the level of this team right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, the depth is really good too, man. The depth is really good. Like the fact that they can just guys get to step up here. You're missing Eustáquio, who just signed for Porto, and he's a really nice player, just a really elegant midfielder. Davies is the best player on the team. He's streaming, and screaming, and it's great to see his reaction to some of the goals because he's so clearly invested in the program. But the guys be able to step up. Shout out to Milan Borjan, incredible saves, 3 incredible saves, I would say, in the last 2 games here. Hoodie Mello, Canada's version of Hoodie Mello. And yeah, man, it's just I mean, honestly, next to watching the Raptors defeat the Heat every other day, that's the most fun I've had watching sports in 2022, which I know is not a high bar, but still.
The last thing I'll say about this Canadian team, it's like, okay, you look at this Team USA right now, and it's not all that, right? Like, this is not the team that had, Clint Dempsey and Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley and Tim Howard. It's definitely not that team. But even though that team has been on the downswing, you look at a team like Mexico over the years, like the World Cup, Mexico, every World Cup, go look at what they do. They go to the round of 16 every World Cup.
Yeah.
And you can make a legit claim that Canada is better than the Mexico team right now.
Yeah.
So finish first, get into a decent group, and then see what happens.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. It's going to be such a fun time watching the World Cup. Every year is always a fun time watching the World Cup. But, I mean, like, let's be real. I mean, I'm Chinese and I'm Canadian, so I didn't have a lot to root for in the World Cup. I mean, I could probably say the same for you.
Yep. I mean, hey, I'm
listen,
Indian.
Man, when was the last time India was in the World Cup, man? Probably was a while.
Oh man.
I know. So I know the last time China was in the World Cup, they played Brazil. They were in the same group as Brazil. Man, that was sad. So I'm looking forward to being able to cheer for Canada, man. I think so. Yeah. Yeah, that was a.
Yeah, I think.
That was a weird year for the World Cup. I got.
India's was a long time before that too.
Yeah,
it might have been the 50s.
All right, I know Alex is already waving at me to finish the segment. So V, I appreciate you coming on as always. Thanks for all that you do. Read all your work at Raptors.com. Everything you do at CBC. You're fantastic, man.
Thanks a lot, Will.
All right, I think that's a good spot for us to take a break. I'm your host, Will Lou, and you were listening to The Raptors Show, powered by DoorDash on Sportsnet 590, The Fan. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan, powered by DoorDash. I'm your host, Molu. I am joined in the second segment by Sportsnet's Michael Grange. Grange, how are you doing?
Well, how are you doing?
I am doing great. I couldn't even sleep last night. I was so excited for the Raptors beating Miami twice in January. I guess this is February, too, so back-to-back months defeating Miami. Grange, we are going to press you about Goran Dragic, as we always do every time you come on. I'm sure there's lots of new developments in the Goran Dragic saga that people would love to have come to a close in about a week or so. But first, I wanted to talk about your really, really well done piece on Fred VanVleet that you put out last week. It's called Born to Lead, and you can find it on sportsnet.ca. And in the story, you really go all the way back to when Fred was a kid, and sort of what he was like as a kid, his upbringing, what his family was like, sort of the situation. And basically, you're trying to look at the idea of what made Fred this incredible leader more than anything else, right? As the player, I think we kind of know about, we can see that stuff, you can observe it more. But what turned him into a guy who has been a natural leader at every single step of his career? And you started off the piece with a pretty graphic detail, I would say, of how Fred sent a kid to the hospital with a hard foul in, I think, middle school. Now, as an editor, that's what I would call a great lead. So please tell us more about that.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the kind words. So it was, Fred as a leader was a fairly obvious. It was definitely a theme that was going to get explored, and you're, when the topic is right there in front of you, you're trying to look for a different way, a kind of way to approach it a little bit differently, and I was on the Raptors West Coast road trip, and they had a few off days in Portland, and and this is kind of the beauty of traveling with a team and not having the restrictions getting lifted a little bit. You actually had a chance just to chat with Fred, and we were kind of asking a little bit about on the leadership side and things like that, and he said this before. I'm sure you've heard it, where he used to be a little wild and crazy. He used to be this. He kind of refers this dark past, so to speak. And so I just kind of asked him, like, any regrets? Anything that you kind of wish you could do over? And he sort of tells this story. And, not every detail of it, but he kind of lets on that, for those who haven't read it, basically they're in a practice and he's playing at Auburn High School, he's in 10th grade. And, and he's kind of a big deal in Rockford, and and Auburn isn't like some superpower, like they're not Montverde where every kid's going to the NBA. It's a kind of a normal high school with a pretty good basketball program. And Fred, the practice is getting a little physical. The head coach there, Brian Ott, is a guy who really preaches. He's kind of a Nick Nurse type, like he really preaches, playing a physical, tough brand. That's their sort of trademark. And he would encourage things to get not quite out of hand, but let things get ramped up a little bit. And on this occasion, Fred was the victim of it. He was getting double teamed. He was getting fouled. He was losing the drills, and he just loses it. And he kind of literally loses the ball. And then there's a guy between him and the ball, and he just puts his shoulder down and goes right through him, breaks his rib, puts him in the hospital, punctured lung. And it was not a great moment. And I think the real telling detail there, though, at the time, was Fred. He wasn't like he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I did this. I'm so sorry." It was like, "What do I got to apologize for?" Like, he fouled me. We're playing. This is how it goes. And people who've played a high level competitive sports are like, they can maybe relate to that. Other people look at it and go, "Is this guy crazy?" Yeah. So it depends where on your spectrum of your, how you assess human nature. But anyway, eventually it was a real kind of pivotal moment for him. There was a lot of talking, him and his mom, him and his stepdad, his coach, and eventually came around, did the right thing clearly and apologized, visited him in the hospital. And they, the same player, they went in and they went on as seniors and finished third in the state of Illinois, which was, I think it's the best finish Auburn's ever had. And, so there's definitely a happy ending to it, but it wasn't just like one incident. It's just Fred was just in this space where he was so far advanced, so much more mature, so much more competitive, that he really had a hard time relating to civilians, let's say. And, or as his stepbrother, JD, told me, he really had to learn how to not bully his teammates. And so the whole VanVleet family is doesn't hold back, and so it was just that progress. So you're starting from that place, and then how did he evolve at high school? How did he evolve at Wichita State? How did he evolve with the Raptors in terms of his leadership skills? Because I think he was a born leader, if there's such a thing, but you're not a finished product, right? And I think that was the story. That was what the angle I was trying to get at.
Yeah, and I think it definitely comes across, and I think it's really interesting that you looked at all the coaches that he had. I mean, you even talked to his football coach. I didn't know Fred played football, but you even talked to his football coach and all the guys that he's been coached by, whether it's, at the middle school level, at the high school level, when he went to Wichita State in particular, but also in the NBA under Dwayne Casey and Nick Nurse. Like, he's played for a lot of, like, demanding coaches. And I think it kind of, like, fits his personality, kind of almost enables him to sort of lead the way he does. And I also think the part of it that's interesting was you had this quote here from his brother J.D. Danforth, and it says, quote, "I remember Fred was in high school, and one of my friends was just asking Fred, who he thought was better than, just around Rockford. And every time he brought out somebody, Fred would say, I'm better than him. I'm easily better than him. I could beat him. So then my Fred started bringing up NBA players, and he was like, now, are you better than such and such? And Fred was like, yeah, I'm better than him right now. And he was like, how about Allen Iverson? Can you beat Allen Iverson? And Fred's like, yeah, I could beat Allen Iverson. I guarantee you I could beat Allen Iverson. This is in high school. I mean, look, everyone obviously is a little, has a lot of hubris in high school. But at the same time, it's just like, wow, Phil Fred's really had this, like, this mentality. Because you clearly see it now in the NBA, too. Like, he's talked about it multiple times. He's like, yeah, I'm crazy like that when, I'm on the floor. Everyone's the same height. Like, yeah, I know I'm 6 foot tall. You've stood beside Fred. I've stood beside Fred. I think you and I are both taller than Fred.
I know I'm definitely taller than Fred, yes.
Me too. Like, I have photographic evidence of this.
I might be able to jump higher than Fred. Like, at least at one point in my life, it would have been close.
Oh,
so,
okay. Well, okay.
I know this is. I'm not pumping my tires up. I'm just saying, like, Fred's, he's an incredible athlete, but I always say, like, being an incredible athlete doesn't get you in the NBA. Getting to be in the NBA, you're a 1 in a million athlete most of the time.
Yeah.
And Fred's, look, he's obviously a great athlete, but his attributes are well beyond his athleticism. And but I think one of the biggest things he has going for him is, Landry Shamet, I talked to him. He's with the Suns. He played with them for a year at Wichita State, and I didn't actually end up using it in the piece, but he said basically I would have conversations with Fred. It was almost like he was delusional, and I wish I had used it, but it was along those lines. Like he wasn't making fun of it. He was like his self-belief was so powerful, and I think that's one of the tricks of Fred's personality is he's able to encompass a lot of those traits that you need to do extraordinary things. But often, I think a lot of times they come wrapped in, an uncomfortable package, right? Like when people actually literally think they're, they have this belief that they're exceptional, and a lot of times it's like, there's a negative connotation to it, I guess is really what I'm trying to say.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? And Fred manages to pull all this off while being very chill. I think he's grown to be a really empathetic teammate.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and no one really cares how you deal with the media, but I think it does reflect, the way he is, so accommodating and honest, and you never feel talked down to when you ask a question. Those things kind of, I think it's more than good manners, right? Like it's like, we're people, and we're going to treat each other that way, so I think it's all kind of this really rare package of, incredible ambition, incredible confidence, and yet there's a bit of a humility and an ability to relate to people who aren't quite, that have come from a different walk, I guess. And he didn't always have that, I guess, is the point. And he, it's really turned into one of his real qualities and as a pro athlete.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, obviously for us, like, we're in the media, we deal with Fred. We appreciate these things maybe more than the average person. But I even think that, like, even for the fans who are watching at home and stuff like that, like, let's say the Raptors have a tough loss. not everyone wants to speak after a loss. Everybody wants to go to the podium after a win. Especially if you have a good game, you go to the podium, you got to ask questions about how great you are. You give some great quotes. That's easy. But who comes to the podium? Who steps up to that mic and answers the tough questions about when they lose, about when they have a bad performance that maybe leads to the loss? Who's willing to take those things on the chin? And Fred's one of those guys, and I respect that a lot. And
Fred was like that, and Kyle was like that. And I think it is, when you go through the league over time, it's a bit of a trademark. I think it's almost like the guys who really get it, the guys who really want to have big careers. Your Dwayne Wades, your LeBrons, your Chris Bosses. There's a lot of times there's like a transition period where they kind of push back against some of that.
Yeah.
But the ones who get it, in the end, that's when they step up because they understand that that's part of being a leader and that's how they're kind of protecting their teammates and it goes a long way. And I think chemistry-wise too.
Yeah, for sure. And you know this as well as anybody. If you're doing a story on one of the Raptors teammates, you talk to Fred about that teammate because he's going to give you a great quote on everybody. If you notice, like for most players, when they go to the podium, you're asked the questions they get asked about are about themselves. Like when Gary went to the podium yesterday, the day before, it was like, damn, why are you scoring 30 every game? You're looking amazing. How did your dad help you influence your career and stuff like that? With Fred, he's almost like when Nick Nurse goes to the podium. You ask him about like one or two questions.
Than Nick.
Oh yeah, he's definitely better. And Nick's a good quote too.
And Nick's really good. But no, Fred's like I've been doing this a long time, and he is exceptional. Like he is, and I've often said like, it's not that he's good as an athlete talking about things. It's not that he's good as a well-known athlete talking about things. He's the kind of insights he can offer on kind of team dynamics and interpersonal dynamics. I'd be happy to hear from anybody. Like he's just an exceptional person, really, yeah. And it's you don't take that for granted, believe me.
Absolutely. And just the last thing on your story, which is really great. Everyone should go read it. I don't want to step over a whole story, but you had a quote here from his mom, Sue, and she gave you this quote that says, "Do you have kids? Don't sometimes they just totally shock you? Like, who's that person I gave birth to?" That's some of the moments that I have. And I think we spend all our life trying to mold them into good people or what we perceive to be a good person. And then all of a sudden they grow up and they've done that and more. And that's kind of like how I feel about them. And that's genuine, like tear-jerking stuff. Like you don't even necessarily need to be a parent, to be touched by what Sue said there. So honestly, it was a fantastic bit of reporting from you. Just a great piece overall. It's called Born to Lead. You can find it on sportsnet.ca. Okay, now that we have gotten all the sentimental stuff out of the way, it's time to talk about Goran Dragic, who was most recently pictured at the Heat facility once again, this time wearing a 10-day shirt, which you're like, what's the significance of that? Well, actually, that day he was pictured with that shirt. It was 10 days exactly to the day of the trade deadline. So we have political prisoner Goran Dragic just holding out down in Miami. Anyway, so what's the latest with Goran?
I wish I had a ton of detail. It's interesting to me. I was talking to people from Miami, and they don't really know. Like there is a bit of confusion out there, and I am a little empathetic towards the Raptors. I think they've been. There was some reasoning behind why Goran came here and didn't really fit in, didn't quite perform. There was a reason why they were willing to, kind of do what they've done, right? Is keep paying them to not be here. And, they can't really say why, right? Like it's a private personal matter, and that's what they're sticking with. And I heard at one point that Dragic might not even play this year. Like he might just sit it out because of rules, like the buyout rules and all that. He can't even go back to Miami, for example, and play this year if he wanted to. And he might sit out this year and just play, sign with Miami again next year. But I was talking to some people from his camp, so to speak, last night, and he's, if he can latch on to a team that he thinks can win, he's ready, he's willing, he wants to. And so it's really just, we're down to, I guess, 8 days to find out if, how the Raptors want to use that contract in some kind of transaction. And I would say there is some pressure on Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster because the optics haven't been great. And I think like I said, I think they've done a solid, right? They've kind of swallowed this a little bit. I mean, they've been pretty, they've kept everything confidential, which they've been asked to do. And, but if the deadline comes and goes and all they end up doing is buying Dragic out and he goes and plays for whoever, it's going to look kind of bad on them.
Yeah, I agree.
And, and so that's going to be kind of a fascinating kind of week or 8 days now to see how that shakes out.
Absolutely. And I guess the latest is that the Raptors are willing to attach a first with Goran. That's essentially what I would say probably the main package that they're shopping around, right? And that gives you, $19 million in expiring contracts plus a first-round pick. Like that, you should be able to get someone decent there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's going to be probably going to be a mid first-round pick just outside the lottery.
That's fine.
And so, I think from the Raptors' point of view, if they can turn that and that salary number into, a pretty good player or maybe even two players, and I think if the way this team is sort of shaking out, like, who your top 5 or 6 are, right? Like, you'd have to be a pretty exceptional trade to dislodge that.
Yeah.
But if you can, kind of extend your lineup, as they say in baseball, and all of a sudden you have 7, 8, 9 guys that are really effective, then you can win some games with your second unit. You can take, you're not so vulnerable if there's an injury. You can take the load off. They don't have to play 41 minutes every night. So I think, and then ideally, if you're going to give up a pick, obviously you'd want to get somebody who has a year or two of team control. At worst, a restricted free agent, somebody that can help you a little bit this year, can count as part of your 8 or 9 guys going into next year, maybe even the year beyond. And, and then all of a sudden you're looking like more of a complete team.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know Blake did this exercise with you, too, about just like asking you to come up with trades so he can diss the trades. A bit of a presumptive column from Blake, I would say. Why would you ask us to do this? Just so that you could just shoot them down? But
and also, I found his email a little bit, I'll just have a little fun with it. Yeah, let's see exactly how much fun you have.
I'm like, okay, I didn't realize I was emailing Bobby Webster. Like, come on, man. Anyway.
But I would say doing that, like, man, there's the two things I took away from that exercise coming up with some trades was, one, man, the Raptors are just short on quality players to add into to attach, right?
Like if you throw in Malachi Flynn, for example, how many teams is that moving, right? Nobody cares.
No one. Yeah. No one. It's and it's funny, just in like the week since you've done it, all of a sudden Precious Achiuwa, you're like, interesting, like maybe you got to give this a little more time. Mm-hmm. But
rising star, baby.
Yeah.
3-point specialist in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, but anyway, no, there's I kind of I don't know how you approached it, but I was like, let's see if we can, take these limited assets and turn them into 2 players at positions or roles that the Raptors could use help in. That was sort of my guiding light.
Yeah, and ultimately, we have about a minute left. Like, if you're gonna say the Raptors are gonna try to upgrade one position in particular, if they could choose. Like, is it center or is it the third guard? Because I think both those are the most clear, obvious weaknesses for me.
I guess I'm a little more encouraged because of the way Achiuwa's been playing. I'm hoping that Khem Birch can come back and actually play 30 games.
That'd be nice.
So I think if you could have somebody who gives you a little bit of help in play creation and especially shooting out of outside of your top 5 guys. So I guess I would go with a backcourt type player.
Yeah, I mean if you can get Goran Dragic, out and you get back a Goran Dragic who wasn't a jerk. I feel like.
I think I think the one name you see kicking around, I have no idea if it's realistic or not. But a guy like Bojan Bogdanovic.
Yeah. Yep. I like that.
He would be, because there's a guy he would challenge to start. Like if he's coming off your bench, all of a sudden you're pretty good. And again, the numbers probably line up. It just matters. You never know what Atlanta really wants to do. But then you start going, you keep doing this, and you're like, well, what about Evan Fournier? He had a great week. And,
come on.
And you kind of keep going down these names, and the pickings get pretty slim.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Grange. Quick yes or no answer. Do the Raptors get a deal done? a week from now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, that does it for us.
I've been wrong before.
Well, it's all good. We've all been there. Grange, I appreciate you. We'll definitely call you next week as well to get more updates. So that does it for us today. I'm your host, Will Lou, and you've been listening to The Raptors Show, powered by DoorDash on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Make sure you find The Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe, and please rate and review our show. A reminder, we are back in the studio and streaming live once again on Sportsnet's YouTube channel Monday to Friday between 2 and 3 p.m. Thanks to our guests, Vivek Jacob and Michael Grange, and our board producer, Derek Brandeo, and Jennifer Rolnick for helping us behind the scenes with the YouTube stream. I will talk to you tomorrow.